Let me ask you something honestly. How many times this week did you say yes when your whole body meant no? And not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to disappoint someone. High achieving women are often praised for being reliable, capable, and always available. But that always on identity comes with a hidden cost. Today we're talking about boundaries, not the rigid kind, but the kind that lets you reclaim your time without drowning in guilt. Years ago, I saw a picture that has stayed with me ever since. Every time I think about boundaries, this image comes back. Maybe you've seen it too. A frog in a pot of cold water. Then the water is heated slowly, not suddenly, gradually. The temperature rises so slowly that the frog never realizes the danger. By the time the water is boiling, the frog is too exhausted to jump out. And then it's done. I often think about how familiar this is to the way many of us live. Not just with work or motherhood, but with expectations. You don't wake up one day and suddenly become overwhelmed. It happens slowly. One extra responsibility. One more thing you should do. One more favor you agreed to. One more request you don't question. Until one day you realize you're exhausted, resentful, and stretched so thin you barely recognize yourself. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Jagoda, and this is the Coming Home to Yourself podcast, a space for high achieving women who are ready to stop performing strength and start living from within. So let's continue. So, what's actually happening here? Why do we stay in the pot? Remember the frog in the pot, right? In today's world, the heat is often that constant internal urge to respond to every notification immediately, as if our professional identity depends on 24/7 availability. You stayed in the always on mode not because you're incapable, but because you never realized the water was rising. And this pattern often starts very early. When I look back on my childhood, success wasn't defined as choosing wisely. Success meant doing everything. If something needed to be done, the message was simple: you should do it. You should be able to handle it. Be the good pupil, the responsible one, the one who can handle more. And this message didn't necessarily come directly from my parents. It was the atmosphere, the culture, the quiet rule of the environment. If you are capable, you must do more. And if you say no, then maybe you are disappointing someone. Maybe you are being difficult. So many of us grow up with this invisible equation. Pleasant meant good. Helpful meant good. Always available meant good. And boundaries feel like rejections or selfishness or failure. But something happened to me when I was younger that started shifting this belief. I was bullied and it went on for years. And when you experience something like that, you quickly realize something important. You cannot survive by pleasing everyone. You survive by protecting yourself. That was one of the first moments where I started understanding boundaries differently, not as aggression, but as self respect. And now here's something many people misunderstand. A boundary is not something you set once and then life respects it forever. Boundaries are alive, they evolve. The boundary you had as a child in friendships is different from the one you need in a romantic relationship. The boundary you had at the beginning of your career is different from the one you need after 15 years of experience. And motherhood introduces a completely new landscape where your time and emotional capacity are constantly being requested. Sometimes lovingly, sometimes relentlessly. You have to continuously rediscover where your limits actually are. When I first started working, my boundaries were very different. I tolerated things that I would not accept today. Not because I was weak, but because I was still learning where my edges were. Learning what felt respectful, learning what drained me, learning what aligned with my values. And that's the truth about boundaries. They're not rigid rules, they're feedback. They tell you where your energy begins and where it ends, what fuels you and what drains you. I remember the first time I consciously set a boundary at work. I had only been working for a few months, and one afternoon the company was organizing an event. Nobody had mentioned it before to me. About an hour before my shift ended, they suddenly told me they expected me to stay and work the entire evening as well. The assumption was simple. I wasn't married yet, I didn't have children, so of course I must be available. But I actually already had the plans with my friends. I remember standing there thinking, this isn't fair. So I calmly explained that I wouldn't be able to stay. I told them that if they needed help for future events, it would be fair to let people know a few days earlier so they could plan accordingly. And my boss wasn't upset at all, but a coworker was. She thought I was being difficult. I felt a little guilty, but deep down I knew something else. The moment you lower that standard once, the expectations quietly move. Next time it becomes normalized. That's exactly how you slowly become the frog in the pot. I see this so often in the women I work with. You are the person everyone turns to because they know you can handle it. At work, they are the ones who say yes to the extra project. At home, they are the ones remembering school forms, appointments, birthdays, groceries, emotional dynamic. Everyone appreciates them. Everyone depends on them. And they tell themselves they are just being responsible. But inside, they are exhausted. Not because they can't handle life, because they never gave themselves permission to stop handling everything. But what is the invisible cost that they are carrying? Imagine it's Saturday morning. You've looked forward to this all week. Slow coffee, maybe a walk, maybe just nothing. Then a message appears in the family chat. Can someone organize snacks for the sport event tomorrow? Silence for 10 seconds. You feel that familiar internal pressure. Not because you want to do it, but because you know you can. So you type, I can handle it. And suddenly your quiet Saturday is gone. No one forced you, but the moment you volunteered, everyone else relaxed. And you carried the cost. Sometimes the bravest boundary sounds like this. Someone else can take this one. And here's the deeper layer. Most women don't struggle with boundaries because they don't understand them. They struggle because they feel guilty. Guilt is the real barrier. You worry, what if I disappoint someone? What if they think I'm difficult? What if they stop liking me? But what if that guilt isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong? A boundary is not a wall. It's a safe space where your energy can exist without being constantly drained. Let me share one more moment. It's late evening. The house is finally quiet. Your partner is sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. You are in the kitchen finishing the dishes, packing lunches, checking bags. You notice a quiet irritation rising. Not because he did something terrible, but because you became the one who always does the final round. You don't ask for help because asking feels like complaining. So you finish everything silently. You sit down next to him, and the distance between you feels bigger than the couch. He senses something is off. You say nothing. He says nothing. A tiny layer of resentment settles. Not because of the dishes, but because of the boundary that was never spoken. Sometimes an embodied boundary sounds like this. Can we finish in the kitchen together before we sit down? Not criticism, not accusation, just clarity. Connection survives honesty much better than silent resentment. And without boundaries, something subtle happens. Your energy slowly leaks away until you feel like a fruit that has been squeezed until no juice is left. You're still there, but the vitality is gone. And that's why the always on myth is so dangerous. Because in many environments, being always available is still treated like success. Answer the email immediately. Say yes to the extra project. Stay flexible, stay responsive, stay productive, stay pleasant. Let me give you a small example. Imagine it's 9:45 p.m. The kids are asleep. The house is quiet for the first time all day. You sit down with a cup of tea, finally exhaling. Then your phone lights up with a work email. Your body reacts instantly, a tiny spike of tension. And you tell yourself, it will only take a minute. So you open it. That one email turns into 3 more messages, then a quick reply, then checking tomorrow's calendar. And 20 minutes later, the tea is cold and your mind is back at work. Nothing urgent actually happened, but your nervous system never got the message that the day was over. The boundary wasn't about the email, it was about the moment you stopped choosing yourself. Sometimes the most powerful boundary sounds like this: I'll respond to this tomorrow. Not because you're irresponsible, but because your life also deserves an ending to the day. Before we continue, I want to invite you into a 10-second pause. Think about your last 3 yes decisions, not the one you were excited about, the ones that felt heavy. Now ask yourself, did I say yes because I wanted to, or because I was afraid of disappointing someone? Just notice the answer. No fixing, just awareness. Because boundaries often begin the moment we become honest with ourselves. You see, your nervous system was not designed to be permanently available. When you live in that state, the cost shows up in your health, your relationships, and your peace. Burnout, irritability, resentment, disconnection. Sometimes even physical symptoms. Not because you are weak, because your system has a limit. Now, here is where something important happens. When people start talking about boundaries, they often jump straight to techniques. But real boundaries don't start with communication strategies. They start with identity. They come from knowing what is right from you. They are embodied truth and not what is comfortable for everyone else. Interestingly, people often respect calm boundaries much more than defensive ones because certainty is easier to respond to than hesitation. And when a boundary comes from fear, it feels rigid. When it comes from self-respect, it feels calm, clear, simple. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about honoring yourself. You cannot control how someone reacts. They may be disappointed or disagree, and that's okay. The purpose of a boundary is not approval. It's alignment with your values and the life you're trying to build. So let me ask you, where in your life are you still sitting in slowly boiling water? Where have you been saying yes automatically? And what would happen if you listen to that quiet internal signal that says, this isn't mine to carry? Setting boundaries won't remove all conflicts, but avoiding them creates a deeper conflict inside yourself. Maybe the real question is not how do I avoid disappointing people? Maybe the better question is how do I stop abandoning myself? Boundaries are the architecture of a life that actually works. They allow you to stay generous without becoming depleted. When you honor a boundary, you are choosing the life you want over the approval you were trained to seek. And when your boundaries come from clarity instead of guilt, something beautiful happens. Your relationships become more honest. Your energy becomes more stable. Your presence becomes more real. And if this episode resonated with you, listen next to the achievement trap, because the same inner pressure that makes you overachieve is often the same pressure that makes you abandon your own limits. And if you're new here, subscribe so this conversation can continue with you each week. Until the next time, pause, listen inward, welcome home.